We are back with another episode of Automotivated, and I am privileged to be here with Kevin Vaught of Elite Worldwide. Kevin, there's so much to talk about with your experience, 36 years of shop ownership experience. You're a coach with Elite. You have so many other opportunities that you've worked in with the automotive industry. So being able to have you on our show today is not only a privilege, but so exciting for our shops to be able to learn all different things that they're able to do to lead to a successful shop. So Kevin, welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I feel privileged to be here. Thank you so much, Shauna.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, it's a pretty big topic, but in our past conversations, we've really narrowed it down to a few key points of how to run a successful shop. And I think now more than ever, shop owners, they were motivated coming into the new year. The pandemic really put into perspective a lot of things of, what shop ownership looks like for them. So when it comes to working through a pandemic and really looking at the success of your shop, the pandemic really put some things into perspective. Can you talk a
Certainly
little
did.
bit about that?
It certainly did. I think that what the pandemic did was, my belief is I think it accelerated what was already coming.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do. But more importantly, I think it made all of us shop owners, especially the successful shop owners, take a good hard look at their business, every aspect of their business, and
Mm-hmm.
review what they were doing, how they were doing it, tightening things up. And I think the people that had the right attitude. Now, listen, there's exceptions. There's some parts of the country that were terrible, no matter what they did.
Sure.
But for the most part, the ones that had a great attitude about this, and we're going to get through this, and they had the systems and procedures in place, and kept marketing. They continued with their marketing plan. They came out of this pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them had about a 2 or 3 week lull. They were down 25, 30%, but they bounced back. And most clients had a record year last year, even with the pandemic. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that's caused us all to refocus and look back at our business, every aspect, and
Mm-hmm.
make changes when we could, tighten things up a bit. And I think that those things probably need to be done in a lot of instances. So it was a
Absolutely.
blessing for some of us, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of my favorite things that I remember both you and Joe mentioning, Joe wasn't able to join us today, but how it's crisis brings clarity. And that's something that really, really resonates because like you had mentioned, you have to get your processes in place. There's a lot of things that it is crucial to go back to the basics when there's things that are out of your control. Focus on the things that
Boy,
you can do.
that is so well said. I used to tell my employees that all the time. Hey, look, when they start getting sideways, everyone thinks to think outside the box. We got to do something different. Well, before we think outside the box, let's make sure the inside the box is cool. Everything's
Yeah.
taken care of inside that box, right? And so you're right. Go back to the basics every time. And it's amazing. That's what most clients did during this period.
Mm-hmm.
If it meant that the owners had to jump back on the front counter, which a lot of them had to do,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it took, it was crisis management. And let's face it, there wasn't a playbook for this. I think
No,
there will be moving forward. I promise you, at least with my clients,
for sure.
there's going to be a playbook moving forward, but this was no way you could plan for this.
Mm-mm.
And fortunately for our business, our industry, it was a lot less severe than what we initially anticipated. I mean, that's the biggest problem with any of this is the unknown, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And, we just didn't know how bad it was going to be, how bad it was going to be for how long. We just didn't know these things. And so the insecurity of not knowing was the worst part, obviously. But I
Mm-hmm.
got to tell you, the clients that grabbed a hold of this and just, had the great attitude, I'm going to fight through this. I'm going to do what I can to make this as good as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they came out really well because when it did bounce back, boy, they're even better shape than they were going into it.
Sure. And if we're talking about going back to the basics, one of the things that you had also mentioned was how they stayed focused. And I think that really comes into the whole idea of mindset. So
Yes.
not only looking during a pandemic, I mean, you have health concerns, family concerns, financial concerns. So there's a lot of almost analysis paralysis. There's so
Right.
many things that are taking up your headspace. So go back to what you know.
That's it. And again, don't be stretching yourself looking outside the box, because most of the answers are right in front of you. We just
Mhm,
get so caught up that our emotions take over a lot of it too, right?
mhm,
Because let's face it, we were scared. Everyone was scared to death. What's going to
mhm.
happen?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now you're thinking sometimes emotionally and not obviously rationally. And so
Mhm,
that's why it's best to go back to the basics, go back to
mhm.
what you got planned. Let's follow our plan, stick with it. But you're right, the mindset is the most important. And the ones that had again, you can't have a good attitude about this,
Mhm.
obviously. But the ones that had the better attitudes, that I'm going to fight this, I'm not going to let this get me, I'm going to keep my employees, those people just excelled. The people that said, "Oh my gosh, the world's coming to an end. What are we going to do now?" They
Mhm,
struggled, and there's some of them are still struggling, quite frankly. And again,
mhm.
I don't want to mislead anyone or think that I don't recognize the certain pockets in the country that no
Sure.
matter what they did, they couldn't fix anything. I'm
Mhm,
just looking at the bulk, the majority of people.
mhm. And I mean, you did bring up a good point, compared to some industries, you
Oh,
know, auto repair, it is essential for people because there's still people that working on the front lines that need to get to and from work. So while yes, we're not downplaying how difficult it was for a period of time, there were a lot of things that, for our industry, we were blessed with in the
oh,
sense of we could stay open, we could still support people, even if it wasn't what we typically were at.
and again, Sean, I used to tell my people, we need to take this seriously. Being an
Mhm.
essential business is serious.
Mhm.
I think there was 30,000 people transported to the hospital last year, and I think 8,000 of those people went by ambulance.
Yeah.
Well, the other 20 some thousand, 22,000 went by car or vehicle of
Mhm.
some sort. So I think the ones that took it seriously. Can I tell you a real quick story about a client in Las Vegas? This is an amazing
Yes.
story. He was one that Las Vegas got shut down pretty heavily,
Mhm.
but instead of sitting back and pouting, and business was terrible, no doubt about it, he went and set up tents at local hospitals and disinfected all the nurses and the doctors' cars or anyone that worked at the hospital, disinfected them for free.
Mhm.
Knowing there was not going to be any, monetary reward for him at that particular time,
Mhm.
but that, you know, by the way, it paid off in spades when
Oh,
everything started ticking
sure.
back in.
Absolutely.
But more importantly, what it did, it kept all of his team together and still moving forward, as opposed to
Mhm.
sitting there and pouting.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
amazing. I mean, I'm just so proud of this guy. He was not my client. I wish he was, because I'd like to say I took credit for that, but I didn't. But what a great idea. Instead, this, like I said, that's someone that just kept going. I'm going to do what
Mhm.
I can. And this
Mhm.
is one way I can help our community. And so it was awesome.
Absolutely. And those are the things that, these are the types of motivation that keep people moving forward, being grateful that, you are able to help in the areas that you're able to help. And I think that's one of the most fabulous ideas that
Oh,
I have ever heard. And like you had said, I think a lot of people in that sense, okay, you're in fight or flight, right?
there you
So
go.
you're looking for the quick results, but as you had mentioned, the long-term payoff of just people who are now looking at that shop as reliable, as part of the community, as someone who's going to not only keep our roads safe, but keep their customers safe in every aspect that they can, that's huge.
Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Absolutely. That
And I think, as we're still on this topic, just one thing I think that I've noticed.
mhm,
I think that all of us did a very good job early on of letting the customer know that we were taking precautions and we were
mhm,
sanitizing their car, and we were, and I think that a good deal of people are still doing that to a great
mhm,
degree. But I think that where we've slipped in is we're not still telling the customer that
mhm, mhm,
by way of whatever, however means you're going to do that. But the customer, regardless of what people think about this pandemic, half people think that it's very severe. Half people may think it's not quite so severe. But we
mhm,
don't want to. We don't want to mess any half up, right? We want to
mhm,
appeal to everyone. So I think that we need to do a better job of continuing, not only doing the sanitization, but to make sure that the customer knows that we're still doing those things. And I
mhm.
think as we got busy, I think some of that stuff slipped a little bit. And quite
Sure.
and quite frankly, in my opinion, that's going to be something that's going to be here long after the pandemic goes away.
Mhm.
That's going to be an expected thing for customers, I believe.
I completely agree. I think these are the new best practices
I do
that
too.
as we're going to the foundations, these are the basics now.
I
This is
agree.
what's going to put people in a level of comfort. And like you had said, depending on where you're located, there's different restrictions, there's different things that are acceptable. But at the end of the day, there is a safety concern. So by taking the time, investing, and most importantly, letting people know what they can expect when they come to your shop, it really does do a lot for their business, and it prepares people and it holds expectations that are going to separate you from many others in your area that aren't
Absolutely.
doing that.
Absolutely. And I have several clients that just ordered little Post-it notes with their logo on there that says, your car has been cleaned and sanitized, and we appreciate your business. And they just stick it on the steering wheel when they deliver the car. So it's just a simple reminder that we took care of it for you. And like I said, we're probably still doing that, but we're not letting them know that. And that, to me, is the most important part.
I completely agree. I think that's such a great point. And, we're talking about some of these things, communication, how the one shop went out and set up a tent to give back to the community. These are ways that people are looking outside of the box. But one thing that you had mentioned earlier, if we're looking at what shops need to do to continue being successful through the bad times, through the good times, is investing in your marketing as well. So again, we're looking at a crisis. People's gut instinct is to, preserve all cash that they can. But really that's hurting them in the long run.
Well, and you know what, Shannon, they do need to conserve cash,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of things you can do guerrilla marketing that don't
Mm-hmm.
cost any money, cost a lot of time. Well, we have that extra time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people being misled and say, oh, well, if you got a $50,000 budget for this year, you continue spending just like normal. No, at that time we had to retract some because
Sure.
again, we didn't know what was going on. But the people that excelled were the people that then they went into their guerrilla marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had the extra time. And that tent thing is a guerrilla marketing process, in my opinion. That's exactly what that was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's the key, is that when I say continue marketing, it doesn't necessarily mean spending all that extra money, because as you said, we're retracting some, but there's a lot of things you can do guerrilla marketing wise that can continue to keep your name out in front of people. Then when it does turn, guess what? You're going to be the first place they come to.
Absolutely. No, I think that's such a great point. You're talking about, having time back. So that leads me into one of the next points that we also discussed is have a plan for a slow day. But not only a plan for a slow day, like you had mentioned, we now have to have a plan for a crisis as well. So how important is planning in those senses?
I can't tell you. There was no playbook for this, but there needs to be a playbook for this, and not just this, but any other crisis or catastrophe that could come up. I think that yes, I think that I'm begging my clients to put together a slow plan day and a close day. Because quite frankly, the people in Texas, in Arkansas, the last 2 weeks they were closed for 2 or 3 days. Well, what's the process? Do we transfer the phones? Do we do, what you have to have a plan in place, or what happens then? Nothing gets done, right? So, and the same thing with the slow day plan. When things get slow, okay, here's a checklist. Let's go through these things and make sure we get all these things done, right? And again, what that does, busyness breeds business, right? So if you keep everyone busy when things are slow, if you keep everyone busy doing other things, guess what? It will get busy. It just happens. I can't explain it. It's karma. I don't know what it is, but I know it works, right?
Yep.
Like you said, your family was in the auto repair business, I think, or in the field of some sort. At any rate, when we got slow, we used to go borrow cars from our people next door and put them in our bay, because and again, what would happen? It looked like you're busy. Next thing you know, you got busy. So just little things like that. But you know what? As you said earlier, it all goes back to the basics. That's what you did when you first started your business, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because you didn't have any money.
No.
You did guerrilla marketing. You got out and knocked on the windows or knocked on doors, and you
Yes, I did.
and you passed out business cards. And you did all those things that you had no money for. Well, now you get the time, so there's no excuse. That was my statement to everyone. Hey, we got time now. There's no excuse. You're busy. It's hard to go do those things. But this time we had time.
You have time. And, I think everything that we're talking about now, especially whether it's the marketing, whether it's getting back to the basics, whether it's the communication with our clients, it really comes down to the relationships that we have with our customers.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's so key. That's so key.
You know, Sean, I got in a pretty heated discussion with a client not too long ago. He says, Kevin, I just love this new touchless system that I don't have to see customers anymore, and I can just do this and do this. And I said, I hope it doesn't continue. Well, what do you mean? And I said, for the independent, that is our differentiation, is the
Yes.
relationship building. And if we get to a point where we're just a transactional business, well, then they can go anywhere for a transaction. What gives the strength to the independent repair shops, in my opinion, is that relationship building.
Absolutely.
And to your point, I had several clients I talked to throughout that time where customers are calling, can I buy gift cards? Can I prepay for stuff? Because we want to make sure that you guys are okay and you're still around. Big boxes didn't get that. Franchises didn't get that. But the independent world did, because they built that kind of relationship with their clients. And to me, it's all about people, whether it be internally or externally.
Absolutely.
You got the right people internally, then they're going to take care of your external customers. They're gonna all band together, all hands on board, which is what everyone did during this time. So if you got the right people, both externally and internally, it will survive these crises. However, we still need a plan. What is that plan for these crises? And when I say plan, I don't, that's overwhelming for a lot of people.
Sure.
I found the easiest way to do that, just make a simple checklist. It's a living document. You can always add to it. You can always embellish it as time goes on. But right now, think about those 8 or 10 steps that you did immediately when this hit. And just start building the plan that way with checklists, because otherwise it just gets real overwhelming. And as you know, when it's overwhelming, they won't even get started. You're stuck doing nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, you get paralyzed with all of that. And I feel like a lot of times, like you had mentioned, I think it's a great point in this is a working document.
Absolutely.
It's meant to grow, it's meant to evolve, it's meant to improve. And I think a lot of people, when they look at plans, they feel like they have to have it perfect the first time.
And that's why it never gets started. Because if you wait till everything's perfect, I promise you tomorrow there'll be something else so you got to start somewhere. And I just beg my clients to start with a simple checklist. I promise you it will evolve from there.
Yes.
It'll just evolve naturally. You can't, I don't know anyone could sit down and write a SOP manual, just start to finish, right?
If you can, God bless you.
Yeah.
Give us your contact information. We'll pass a bunch of people.
We could use you, right? We could use you. Yeah, leave me your name and number.
That's the genie that we're all wishing for.
Absolutely. But you're exactly right. It's a living document. Understand that. Understand this changes daily. It changes weekly. That's okay. But you got to start somewhere. And that's why I like the slow day plan. Start with that. What do we do? What are the 10 or 12 things we need to do if we're slow today? And I promise you, the ones that are doing that don't stay slow all day.
Nope. But they invest in what they need to in order to grow. And that's important. And you mentioned also how key team members are. I think more than ever, this year required everyone to take a step back and evaluate things.
Absolutely.
Your team was the first person, they're the first people that, we as shop owners were thinking about, right? Because a lot of people had to lay, their team off. They had to make decisions. So how important is it to have a great team around you? And, you had mentioned internal, external. So, networking with other shops, coaches, like the team at Elite. How important is it to have good people around you?
I think I don't think it's measurable. That's how important it is. And I know this because as we're going through the early stages of this pandemic, we had weekly meetings with our clients, Zoom meetings like this. We had weekly meetings with all of our clients just to help them navigate through this. Well, every single one has told us specifically, thank you so much, because just knowing we weren't by ourselves, the information we were given, they could have got from anyone. Information is information. But because they felt like they were part of this network, and they weren't out there on this island by themselves, and we were going to get through this, and there was encouragement from people that were doing well, and there was light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think it's measurable. I think it's so important.
I think it's often overlooked too, which is, it's people get busy, people have an ego sometimes where they don't want to listen to other people.
That's the biggie.
Yep.
That's the biggie.
you now had time to refocus, learn from other people, get inspired. I mean, we're talking about this shop out in Las Vegas who did this guerrilla tactic. I mean, get inspired, learn from others. You know, my favorite quote that I've always been told from any mentors that I had is, "You never want to be the smartest person in the room,"
That's right. That's
and I
exactly
think
right.
that's so important.
That is exactly right. The more, two heads are better than one, five heads are better than two. And, again, I think that gave some of these people a real sense of comfortability that we
Mhm,
are, and like you said, it gave them encouragement, obviously,
mhm,
and it
mhm.
held them accountable to some degree because the next
Yes.
week they wanted to make sure that they were up there with the guys that were doing good. So
Mhm,
I think that accountability and that networking component is immeasurable. I
mhm,
think that the only thing I caution is that in those situations, we don't compare ourselves with everyone else. Compare
mhm,
yourself, do the best, do what you can to do better today for you.
mhm.
Not because I think that's the downside to networking is that people get caught up in comparing their numbers or their situation with someone else. And you just can't do that. Every
Mhm.
business model is a little different. No one
Yes.
has the exact same people,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So I think that's what we have to be cautious of is
mhm,
that we don't get caught up in comparing ourselves with everyone else during these pandemic times. Like every place in the country was different.
mhm.
Everyone had their little lull at a different time. They all had a 2 or 3 week lull. It just came at different times.
Sure. Yep. And the only person at the end of the day you need to be competing is yourself from the day
And that's
before.
what I can't stress enough because
Mhm.
I have clients I talk to that get so spun up. Well, I can't get those. I see that these guys doing these kind of, whoa, 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 time out,
Yep.
time out. That makes no difference.
Mhm,
Makes no
mhm,
difference. What can we do better today than we did yesterday
mhm,
in our world? Whatever that is in our
mhm,
world, what can we do better today than we did yesterday?
mhm. Now, the last thing I want to quickly talk about is the whole idea of leadership. So, one thing that we had mentioned when we originally were talking about this concept was preparing for war in a peaceful time. So,
Absolutely.
we're talking about all these different things, going back to the basics, the people on your team, mindset, which is huge when it comes to leadership, what you're doing to keep your customers informed. How important is leadership within a team to make your shop successful?
I think leadership is the most important aspect of any business.
Mhm,
You've experienced it. Any business without strong leadership eventually fails.
mhm,
It really
mhm,
does because you got to have that leadership. You got to have that guidance. Again, it goes back to when this thing started. The leaders that came out and said, "We're going to do this, 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 and this, and we're going to get through this, and we're going to do this, this." Their team was right behind them. The
mhm.
leader that says, "Well, I think we're going to really try to get through this, but I really don't know what's going to happen." That doesn't instill a lot of confidence in your people.
Oh,
Joe uses by the way, he wanted me to apologize to everyone that he couldn't make it today, but Joe uses something that we do in training a lot, uses an example. John Kennedy, when he said that we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, he didn't say, I hope, we want to, we're hoping to, we're going to put a man on the moon at the end of the decade.
yep.
I mean, it was an impossible feat to do in 9 or 8 years, but they did it because
Yes.
this strong leader said, this is what we're going to do.
Mhm,
Every single problem is not a good word. Every single challenge I see with clients can be traced back to leadership or lack thereof.
mhm,
And the thing about leadership, you can learn that. There truly are natural born leaders. Don't misunderstand me. There is such a thing. But there's a lot of people that became very good leaders because they taught themselves to be good leaders.
yes.
So that's the good news about leadership. It is a learned skill.
Mhm, mhm,
Is a learned skill, and I don't think that there's enough emphasis put on that by some of us owners. Another
mhm.
problem I'm seeing today, honestly, I'm seeing this today, is all these owners that we got to work on their business, like they should be.
Yes.
When the pandemic hit, what do you think they had to do? They had to jump back in and go back on the counter, and they had to jump back in. And the problem is getting them back out again
Yes. Mhm.
because they did what they had to
Right.
do. They jumped
Mhm,
right back in, all hands on deck. If they had to lay someone off, they went back, turning, whatever the case may be.
mhm,
But the problem now is getting them back out of that, getting them back into Q2, right?
mhm,
Getting them
mhm.
back to where they're strategizing and planning for the future of their business. And by the way, that's the only way they're going to get these plans done.
Yes. Completely agree. And I mean, all of this is essential, right? So everything that we're talking about when it comes to running a successful shop, notice it's not the tools that you necessarily have in the shop. It's not the services that you're offering. It really comes down to basics, leadership, mindset, team members. And I think these are all of the things that people push to the wayside because it's not always a part of their day to day.
You're spot on, and the reason they push them to the wayside is because they don't see the immediate gratification,
Mhm.
right? When
Mhm.
you're doing strategic planning for your business or my business or anyone else, you're looking 3 and 4, 5 years down the road. That's what a leader does. He looks down the road. Well,
Mhm.
there's no immediate gratification doing that. Something
Mhm.
breaks and you go out and fix it, immediate gratification.
Mhm.
Employee has a
Mhm.
trouble, you go out and help them, immediate gratification. But, the,
Mhm.
but that's the reason it's so hard to get people to stay in that Q2 and work on
Yes.
their business in a consistent way because there's just not that immediate gratification.
Mhm. Absolutely. Long-term game. We're not looking at day-to-days.
That's
We
it.
are looking at the long term.
And that's the difference between a leader and a manager, right?
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
leader is looking down the road. A manager is implementing and working on today. He's managing,
Mhm.
operating today, but that leader is looking down the road. And that's
Yes.
and that's where I think that we have there's a big void, not just in
Mhm.
this industry. I think there's a big void in all industries in that respect.
I agree with that completely.
There's a big void in our, and I don't want to get political, there's a big void in our country in that respect sometimes, right? I
Yes.
mean,
Yes. Mhm.
leadership, whether it's business, country, or a nonprofit organization.
Yes. Absolutely. No, I think this has been one of my favorite episodes because these are all practical steps that people can take away and learn what to focus on. You're not alone. We know that this past year has been tough for many, but we know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel like we had already talked about. There are shops that are succeeding. So what is your shop going to do to become
There
one
you
of
go.
those successful
There you go.
shops?
And that's where as a owner or as a leader, they
Mhm.
need to, we have a job description elite that the number one is they need to set the goals of the company. Then
Yes.
they need to develop the plans to reach those goals, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And again, we got very reactive during the pandemic out of necessity. I don't think anyone
Yes.
did anything wrong, but we got very reactive during that pandemic. And now we gotta get back to being a little bit more proactive and
Mhm.
planning for that future and not putting the fires out every day.
Absolutely.
Preventing the fires is what I like to say. We don't want to put fires out, we want to prevent them.
Prevent them. Absolutely. Kevin, this has been amazing. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. How can people get a hold of you, the team at Elite? Give us a little bit about what you guys have going on.
Sure, we have lots of different things that we can help people with. I encourage anyone if they want any information, please just go to our website. Look at all the things we have available. We have great coaching programs. We have peer programs. We have individual sales we got all kinds of things can help people with. Just get on the website, take a look, and if they need information, by the way, my email address is k.vaught VAUGHT at eliteworldwide.com. More than happy to answer any questions I can help them with. Just please reach out to me.
Perfect. We'll make sure we put that email below. But Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a pleasure. I think this is a really great topic. And anybody who has anything to share about what their shop has been through in the crisis, what they've seen successfully come out of this, make sure you leave a comment below. We'd love to hear what your shop's been doing. We'd love to showcase your shop. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us for Automotivated, and we'll see you next time.